There are many different types of irrigation used in farming. Like the sprinkler system that we used to finish off our maize crop on Chimwemwe that we still had growing when the rain season stopped earlier this year. Like this rain hose that we used on an onion crop down on Dubai 3 last year. And this is flood irrigation. We used this on cabbages when we started our farm down on what is now called Riverside 1 back in 2020. Yes, finally, we're doing that video on irrigation that so many of our viewers and subscribers have been asking for quite some time. And as you read in the video title, this one is an in-depth look at drip irrigation. We're going to take you through some of the advantages and how it can benefit farmers and gardeners all around the world growing all sorts of crops. And of course, we're going to take you through the ins and outs of one of our drip irrigation setups for vegetables here on our farms. So I'll be the first to admit that drip irrigation may not be as fancy and full of action as those rain gun sprinklers we just saw. In fact, drip irrigation can really be quite boring. But in a world that needs to produce more and more food as the population grows, and as climate change brings us more and more unpredictable weather, and as water supply for agriculture becomes more and more challenging, drip irrigation is already turning out to be the superhero that can save humanity. Stay with us. Greetings from the farm. I hope you're well. My name is Chisha Folotia, and it's so good to have you back with us again here on the Mondo Farms channel. I've been farming here in Chongwe for the past 3 years now, and our farm does 3 things. We grow timber trees for the long term, and during the rainy season, we grow field crops like maize and soybeans. But during the rest of the year, Mondo Farms specializes in vegetables. And to supply them with water, we rely on a system that has proven to be one of the most effective for a wide variety of crops and that is used all over the world. It can be used in a small-scale garden and for larger fields of crops like we have. So some viewers might feel that my intro was a little bit too dramatic. Drip irrigation saving the world. Well, I'm telling you, what I've learned in farming these last couple of years is that it is always full of problems. It is always full of drama. I'll share a story from the last couple of days. We found out that one of our 2-horsepower submersible pumps wasn't working. No water. So you know the drill. You have to fish it out from where it's installed. You check it first to see what's wrong. But we kind of already had an idea because it's happened before. It's not the first time this particular pump has given us the problem. So we take it to the expert in town. He says, mabwele safuti. And then he tells us the same old solutions, rewinding the motor, as it turned out in this particular case. And you're trying to decide, should we rewind the motor again or maybe just get a different pump if we can afford it? But it turned out we couldn't afford it right now. So, okay, look, it's a long story. Fortunately, it wasn't too hectic and we are expecting the pump to be back on the farm tomorrow morning. In the meantime, we were able to make a plan with one of our diesel pumps. But if you think about those crops that this 2-horsepower submersible had been watering, they didn't get proper irrigation for these couple of days. And when you have crops in the field like that, it can be quite a big deal and it can affect your growth and your overall productivity. And it's times like this that I'm so grateful that we use drip irrigation for most of our crops because it is so efficient at saving water that even when you do have water supply challenges like this, which happen on all farms from time to time, that the little bit of water that you can get a hold of can still go a long way. Before we go any further, let's take a second to define drip irrigation. Drip irrigation, it is an efficient and precise method of watering plants by delivering water directly to the root zone. It involves the use of a network of tubes or pipes with emitters or drippers placed at specific intervals that release water slowly and directly to the plants. So as I'm doing the research for this video, I ended up looking up the difference between the word advantage and the word benefit. I thought that advantages and benefits were basically the same thing, but no, it turns out that the two words have different meanings. An advantage is something that makes X better than Y. A benefit is something that you get from using item X or system X or whatever. So on this video, we are going to be talking about the many advantages that drip irrigation has for farmers and gardeners, and the many benefits that farmers and gardeners will get from using drip irrigation. Drip irrigation has many advantages over other types of irrigation. The first and foremost is that drip irrigation cannot be beaten in terms of water conservation. Farmers and gardeners always trying to save water as much as possible. Think about it. If you are using a pump, a diesel pump, a petrol pump, any type of fuel pump, even a solar pump to some degree, then you need to use your water as effectively and efficiently as possible and conserve as much of it as you can. All of the other types of irrigation that I can think of right now, they basically involve spraying or putting water around the general area of a plant. Your rain gun sprinkler, your normal butterfly sprinkler, whatever it is, they are spraying around the plant, right? And then the water will fall down and finally make it down into the ground. Even flood irrigation means putting a lot of water on the ground in the beds or furrows that you put down there, and then it will finally make its way down into the ground. But with drip irrigation, you are taking only very small droplets of water and placing them right next to the plant. So it is highly effective in terms of saving water because you only put those little droplets right down to where the plants are. There are even some types of drip irrigation that are placed beneath the soil. So with the surface drip irrigation, your water, this is the root, right? This like my hand is the root. And then you have the water come down here, and then it comes down towards the roots, and the roots are all nice and happy. But with subsurface irrigation, your lines are running underneath the roots and right there, and the roots are growing right where the water is coming from. That is incredible efficiency, you know. When drip irrigation is used properly, there is very little wastage of water, either with it being evaporated because it's just been placed on the surface and then it evaporates because you have to put a lot of water through your sprinkler or your flood, or through it flowing away. And by the way, as water runs off after you've sprinkled it or sprayed or ray gunned it or whatever it is, it's causing a lot of erosion and taking the beautiful topsoil that you actually need to grow your crops properly. It's taking it away. It's taking it away. That, by the way, is advantage number 2. As we continue to list the ways that drip irrigation is better than other types of irrigation, let's talk about disease. Disease is a farmer and gardener's worst enemy, one of the worst enemies. Okay, we have many, many enemies, but disease is literally one of the worst enemies. So here you go. You spray with a rain hose or some sort of irrigation system, right? Sprinkler. And then it leaves the leaves wet, if you'll excuse the pun. And a wet foliage is one of the best places for funguses to grow. And many, many diseases that we have in farming, they are caused by wet areas, especially when you have a lot of plants planted together and the whole things become very dense. Many farmers will be able to tell you stories, including a certain farmer called Chishifoletia, operating Mondo Farms on the outskirts of Chongwe, about losing crops to fungal diseases during the rain season. It is not a great thing. But with drip irrigation, here we go again. The leaves are basically dry and it's the ground around the plants that is moist. That is an amazing advantage. Advantages and benefits can sometimes blur into each other, right? For example, one benefit of drip irrigation is that it promotes healthier plant growth. Now, I use the word healthier, which basically implies that it is more healthy than something else. And we said earlier that the word advantage means what makes something better than something else. Oh, the English language, it can be quite a minefield. It's something that's always fascinated me. So, back to why do we get healthier plant growth? It is because by having the drip irrigation system deliver water directly to the root zone of the plants, they get a healthy and steady and controlled supply of water. And this reduces the risk of overwatering, because it's quite difficult to overwater, and it also reduces the risk of underwatering, and that leads to healthier plant growth overall. Another major benefit of drip irrigation is that it saves farmers and gardeners on time and labor. It requires a lot less manual effort and work than other types of irrigation. Like, for example, the way our systems work, as we'll see later, is we have different zones. So you on the bed, on the block. Then you have this zone, you put it on, you switch on the drips for a certain agreed amount of time that the manager has calculated, and evaporation rates and blah, blah, blah. So let's say it's 30 minutes, it's at 45 minutes, it's an hour, and then you come back 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour later and switch it off. Then you go to the next block and you switch that on for 30 minutes, 45 or an hour, and then you switch that off, and then you go to the next one. You don't have to be moving sprinklers around, lugging them from place to place, because you're using the same sprinkler in different areas. And once the piping and and sort of like water supply system on your drip system is set up, it basically requires very little maintenance until the time you're coming to dismantle it when your crop has been retired. Drip irrigation systems can also be automated and with timers and solenoid valves. So you'll have at midnight, this zone will come back on for 30 minutes, 45 or an hour, and then at 00, whatever it is, whatever the time is, the next zone will come on, and you can get your drip irrigation being done at different times. Woof, automation. You can also even go one step further with your automation with your drip systems, because you can put in these moisture sensors into the ground at certain places that will actually automatically switch your drip system on those certain beds and places. One, it triggers it and says, oh, it's now dry enough, let's switch on the thing. And then the moisture sensor keeps monitoring it while it's running. And then when the moisture in that bed is above a certain level that you've set the automatic sensor to, it can actually switch it off. Whoa, imagine the time saving that you can do with that by it basically taking care of itself. I'm really looking forward to the time when Mondo Farms will have some of those systems in place. And as they say in the islands, im soon come. We're getting there slowly but surely. There are many different types of drip irrigation systems used around the world, and it all varies according to what the farmer or gardener wants, what type of plants, what rate of water he wants to be able to put. The basic idea is that you have a pipe with holes in it, and that hole allows you to place water in controlled rates at a controlled specific position of where you want the water to be. Sometimes when you're growing a tree, for people with orchards, there's special systems of drip for them where they have like a drip ring that goes around a tree. Oof, that's quite special. Then you've got like drip emitters that will release water to a tree, which is different from the way we release water to, let's say, a vegetable plant like an eggplant or a pepper or a tomato or something like that. On our farm, we've actually even made our own type of drip irrigation system. We've got certain places where we've got trees, windbreaker trees that we've planted and we want to propagate, that are placed at maybe 2 meters apart or 2.5 or 3 meters apart. You can't get a drip system easily that we can afford for those particular trees. So what we did is we used our own system. We took a 25 millimeter polypipe and then laid it along next to, along the row of trees and poplars or whatever we were doing. And then next to each tree, we bore a hole right there. This tree, hole, next tree, hole, next tree, hole at that. So when you then switch on the water supply for that one, you get a nice steady flow of water on that group of trees or along that line. And then it saves you all the time and effort of a guy having to connect a hose pipe to a pumpy and then going along and standing there for X amount of minutes and then moving to the next one for X amount of minutes. Old school, traditional. So with drip irrigation systems, there's a type and a variety that is suited for all types of agriculture and gardening. And growing flowers as well, because we use drips for growing plants and ornamental plants as well. The type of drip irrigation system that we generally use around the farm, it's called drip tape, and this is what it looks like. But before we take a look at this one, let me show off a little bit, because finally, Mondo Farms has finally got its hands on some Revolus T-tape. Woo! This is one of the leading brands around the world, and here's a package of it. This is how it comes generally. 2,300 meters, a wonderful 20 centimeter, wonderfully engineered product. Taking a closer look at this particular offcut, which has been one of the stuff that we got, and it's written as 200 meters. Farmers and gardeners tend to buy a lot of drip tape in order to be able to take the water directly to where the crops are. It all depends on your size and scope of your operation. Over the last couple of years, we've been buying a type of drip tape from one of our local suppliers who was getting it from India. And it was a very, very, very good brand from India. I can't quite remember the name, but I'm very grateful that it has pushed us. And we've been using it on all different types of crops. We've used drip tape on onion. We've used drip tapes on pepper, on cucumber, on eggplant, which is our main crop, of course. We've used quite a lot of drip tape, and we have literally bought kilometers and kilometers from them. Now, let's take a good look at this stuff. This is the Revolus T-tape, and this particular one is a 20 centimeter spacing. You'll always hear drip tape described as so many centimeter spacing. Normally 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters, or 40 centimeters. The stuff that we have was 40 centimeters, and we're basically making a plan. We were advised to use this stuff, but things just didn't pan out, and we couldn't get our hands on it at the time. What is the centimeter spacing referring to? It's referring to this little hole here. Now, this hole is not just a hole. In fact, I'm even wrong by using the word hole. It's called an emitter. Emitter. How do you spell that? A-M-M-E-T-E-R. It's a specially designed opening that allows water to drip out of this tape at a certain specific flow rate. So you'll find your T-tapes or whatever will be also timed to say this is 4 liters a minute or 2 liters a minute or whatever it is. A little bit of stuff that you will need to ask the experts about. By the way, please don't in the comments try and avoid asking me very specific questions about drip tape installations, because I mean, you have experts in your country where you are, around where you are, and they will be able to give you something very site-specific. So I try and avoid on the Mondo Farms channel in the comments giving very generic advice, because my sister's a lawyer and she's told me, don't say anything. Don't say anything. All right, so a little bit more about the spacing. The 20 centimeters here refers to this one to this one, the 20 centimeter spacing. You'll notice that the drip tape is quite flexible. You can basically, take it around and, do things with it and store it. And we do tend to wrap it around once we finish, and we're going to reuse it in certain places. Speaking of reusing, we have some drip tape that we bought, our very first drip tape from back in September, October, November 2020, and we're still using it on certain parts of the farm. We buy drip tape quite consistently and continuously, and we mostly reuse the drip tapes that we've had in certain ways. Of course, you have to repair them and stuff and fix them and stuff like that. But if you look after drip tapes properly and the guys take care of it, then this product, I mean, it's made of plastic after all. Come on, think about it. It can last you for years and years and years. So for all of you accountants who are looking to set up a crop of, tomato or eggplant or onion or something like that, and you are doing all your costings, and then you do your costings for labor, for chemicals, for seeds and all of that stuff, and then you say, oh, and 1,000 meters of drip tape. I wouldn't put this as an expense. I would definitely put drip tape as an investment and capitalize it. Yeah, capitalize it. Why not? Why not? Why not? What's the depreciation rate? It's up to you. So here's the thing. All this time, I've been safe and sound filming here under the shelter of this beautiful shelter that we have here. And now it's time to leave the comfort of this place and go out into the hot midday sun. I'm going to take you out to Kondwani 1, where we are growing some cucumber and some eggplant, and show you how the drip irrigation system itself is actually laid out. But first, we're going to take a stop at the water reservoir at Sungani and talk about a couple of things that are integral into the system there. Come along. A beautiful sight. Water coming in from our main pumping system, and here is the reservoir itself, Sungani Water Reservoir. It is basically a great big tank, and it contains, if it was ever allowed to be full, if we didn't have crops that needed the water, it would contain about 4 point something million liters of water. So I'm out in the sun again, and you've got to start thinking about things like protection from the heat, which is why I always like to wear a hat as much as possible whenever I'm out here. Plus the fact that I actually have what is commonly referred to as a solar panel growing on the top of my head, thanks to male pattern baldness that I inherited from certain sectors of my family. All right, okay. Back to the water reservoir. This water reservoir is where we store the water that we use for irrigation. So this is where it all starts. And I'm now gonna take you and walk you down there. I hope you can see down this outlet. The water comes from down here. Underneath here, there's an outlet over there, and it comes out from out here. So we're gonna walk down there. Let me see if I can walk down this slope carefully without tumbling and falling. Okay, we got that right. So the outlet is down here. Let's come over here, and it is coming down here. We're supposed to be getting this thing covered. Actually, the guys were here yesterday covering up some other parts of the pipe. It's quite a long 50 millimeter pipe that runs from Sungani out to Kondwani. By the way, on Kimberley Farm is named in honor of our late mother, who we are just about to celebrate 30 years since she passed on back in 1993. And whenever I'm here, she's always close to my heart. And she was part Tumbuka, so the fields here are named in that particular beautiful language, the one that they say is the most beautiful language in Africa, actually. I think. Muriuri. Yeah, beautiful. So here's where our water is coming down from, and it's coming underneath this road here. It's the road that goes to Kondwani, and this is what I need to show you next. This is one of our water filters. In a drip irrigation system, it is crucial to filter water before it goes out to the field, because all water, wherever it comes from, will have a certain level of impurities. Whether it comes from a borehole, whether it comes from a river or some other source of water, there's always some sort of impurities. So we have to have a filtration system like this one. Ours here, this is the way we do it, the way most people do it actually. It's pretty simple. The water comes in out of the ground, there's an elbow there, then comes here, there's another elbow. It's a 50-millimeter pipe, by the way. And then we've got a gate valve. Why do we have a gate valve here? Because at certain times, we need to clean this thing, and you can't clean it when the water's going through it. It's basically impossible. So it's used when we're cleaning. And let me close the gate valve here, and it comes through here. This is a 2-inch disc filter, and this is what we use to filter out the particles. It's amazingly important. This is something that should never, ever be forgotten. Or sometimes if you accountants out there, farmers are trying to save money, you think, I don't need a disc filter. You'll definitely regret, because the particles will clog up your emitters, and then you'll have to buy new drip tape, which is much more expensive than buying one of these. This thing, I'm not going to open it right now. It's got quite a simple but complex system, and we clean it every day, sometimes at the end of the day, sometimes at the beginning of the day, or we clean it when we notice there's a problem with how the drips are dripping, and we basically use the water from this to clean it. It's quite straightforward. And then the water comes back down here, down into the elbow, and down onto another elbow, and it goes out to Kondwani. I need to remember to open this gate valve again, because we'll need this same water that's coming down here when we're showing you how the dripping is actually done out onto the field. Our next stop is where we look at what we call the Venturi system, which is what we use to inject water and chemicals into the water. The chemicals and fertilizer, should I say, sorry, driving and talking, before the water actually goes out there. By the way, there is Kondwani. Woo, Kondwani 1, looking beautiful. So here's the Venturi injector system that we have for Kondwani. We did a very detailed video on Venturi injection, so I'm not really going to spend too long on this one. I'd really advise you to have a look. It's on our Mondo Farms channel, and I'll put the link in the description. But the basic idea is that you get the water coming through here. We use that container over there to put in, whether it's our liquid fertilizer or sometimes some of the chemicals. We put in there the insecticides or the fungicides, and then there's a pipe that will run through here. We don't have it on now because you don't leave these things lying around in Pazed, you know what I mean. So then it comes through here. The water gets sucked. Actually, let's do some B-roll and look at a quick look at how it actually works.
Kwenye drenching na Venturi ma foliar fertilizer chemical common cow. So the drenching on air. Only 1A.
So walking down from there and going to show you the actual blocks. A quick word about planning. Like everything else, if you want to succeed, you've got to be planning it even before you start. One of my most common sayings, people are saying, Mr. F, you're always having these sayings all the time. And it's very simple. It's the old one. You know the one that says, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So before we lay out a system on our crops like this that takes water into all the various blocks, it all starts with a plan, it all starts with a diagram, just like this one. So this is the plan, the actual diagram, the plot that Tyson, our farm manager, actually came up with. And this here, Kondwani 1D layout, is what we are actually doing there. Kingswell is here from Winterthorne. He's one of our main plumbers. So he comes in when we need to do some heavy lifting. The main advantage of having a plan like this one, as we said, is that it allows you to be able to calculate the quantities of all the materials that you need. You look at your 50 millimeter pipe and it tells you it's got 70 meters. You've got 165 meters or 40 millimeter drip poly pipe, sorry. It's got your length of the drip tape 2964 that you need. It also gives you a very visual representation of what needs to be done, and it allows things to be done better. After all, you wouldn't build a house without some sort of sketch plan or drawing, would you? So looking into our overall system, we've got our Venturi down there, the 50 millimeter that runs down and it drops all the way down into block D, C, A, B, and A. Alphabet backwards is not easy. And we started our work from down there and we've been coming up. So this will be the last block that will be planted here on block D. So our 50 millimeter comes along, and at each block, there's a T, that T over there, that brings the water down as a 50 millimeter and it comes into the block. We've got 3 sub-blocks into each block. It all gets a little bit technical, but stay with me. And on each block, you have another T, this T down here. So this is a reducing T, taking us from this 50 millimeter down here, 50, 50, 40, and then it comes down here. Then we put another gate valve because sometimes we just need to control what's happening here. We do a lot of gate valves here on our farms, and this brings this 40 millimeter down into the block now, where it can actually go into the plants themselves. But there's another secret. Here is yet another T, and we've got one here, one here, one here, one here. They're going on. I think there's what, 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. And this one is called a bypass. Let me move out of the way and show you how it works. So our 40 millimeter T comes up here. We've got a short piece of pipe. Then we've got another gate valve that we use to control and stop water. We could switch on this gate valve here and then have our water flowing along these pipes and feeding these blocks of beds, these beds, particular beds that we actually have here. Let's give a quick count if we can. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beds that are being covered by this particular bypass. We're going to talk a little bit about why we use bypasses a little bit later as we go down into the blocks. So we're now in 1C, and what do we have here? We've got some baby cucumber that we direct planted exactly 20 days ago, and this is what it looks like. And that is one of the advantages, if we go back to the advantages versus benefits that we were talking about earlier of drip irrigation, that you can actually use it on direct seeded crops and it won't come and disturb the crops. Imagine if we had a rain hose. Rain hose is vicious, imachaya! And then if we had the sprinkler would poof, and then the seeds would be all coming out. But with the drip tapes, it's just nice and easy. Nice and easy. I think you can see that I'm team drip tape today. So here we can see the emitters, and the first thing you notice is that these emitters look a little bit different from the ones that I showed you on the Revolis drip tape earlier. So they're a slight different design, and they give us a little bit of a different literage or waterage than we have with the other one. The next thing you notice, number 2, is that we lay the drip tape out to have the emitters facing upwards. You know, it would be counterintuitive to have them down here, but we learned from some experience and some good advice that when you put them up here, there's less clogging because, you know, there's dotty here. This dotty comes and it clogs here. So the water comes out and it actually comes down here. Number 3 difference from what we had earlier, and I did mention this before, is that the spacing between this emitter, this one, and all of the others in between each emitter on this particular tape is 40 centimeters, which is wonderful and fantastic for us because our plants are actually 40 centimeters apart. So it's almost like each plant gets his own particular source of water right next to him, as long as you keep your spacing right. And here we go. Finally, we get to a drip tape that's on. And you saw it was flat earlier, but when it's full of water like this one, it becomes nice and round. And here we see the emitter doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. The definition of drip irrigation is when you see a drip emitter emitting driplets. Or is it droplets? And again, we see the 40 centimeter spacing right there. There's one. There's a little cucumber baby plant here that's still got a little bit of its seed, the original seed there. And here is the Evo Vondwe, the one we ate on this farm. And now we're looking at how we actually connect the main pipe that's supplying, from the bypass into the beds itself. And here is the system. The first thing we do is we make a hole. We make a hole with a special, what's called a drip hole punch thing. And it makes quite a big hole like this. So this one has got 3, by the way. Let me show you. It's got 3, 1, 2, 3. And we had used this one, I think, on some onion beds last year. This particular 40 millimeter pipe. But here for this one, we got this new pipe and we've got 2 holes in there. And just next to where the hole is this thing. It's got a very interesting name. It's called a rubber grommet. Things like this in modern ordinary farming in the real world, they tend to lose their names and we tend to adapt our own names. And then when you're buying from this supplier, it comes and gives you a different name that you get. But the idea is kaja kamene kama fianta hapa. Kaja. And then from here, we pin in this valve. And this valve comes in here and we're able to open and close this particular valve if we needed to. In this particular case, I'll leave these on because someone is actually working here. This is how the rubber grommet actually looks when it's thingy. See, that's a piece of rubber that goes in there, and it's the one that actually goes in there. And this is another type of connector that we actually have. And you can see this end goes in there, and then this part goes into the drip tape. Look, there's some other videos that you'll find on YouTube that will show you exactly how to connect drip tape. But let me suffice to say that this is called a straight connector and it doesn't have the little valve on it. On the other end of the drip tape, down there, 20 meters down the line, is one of these. Look at this. And this is called an end plug. It's called an end cap. It's called the stopper. It's called many, many things, but what does it actually do? It actually stops the water from going and escaping. So this one is located down there. See this little ring? That's a sign of quality. These ones, the ones I showed you earlier were blue, and these are green, and these are part of the Revulis drip accessories that we're so excited to be finally getting here on Mondo Farms. There are also times when your drip tapes are down here and then they get cut. For whatever reason, they get cut. These are, delicate pieces of plastic as much as they're sturdy. And when we have that and we have to tear a thingy, traditionally they would be using kagamba and they would just put a piece of plastic there and it causes havoc with your drip flow rates and stuff. So we use these guys. This is a little joiner piece that we cut. And it's also called a coupling, a union, or whatever it is. And we use these to mend tears and holes that we have. Sometimes we actually have to use two different pieces of drip tape, and this is what we use at that point, this union coupling. Drip tape plumbing is very similar to poly pipe plumbing and everything else, with the same basic concepts. You have a beginning, you have a connection, you have a joint like this, and of course you have the end cap at the very end. And here at the end of this particular bed, we find one of those couplings that I was talking about. So I think what happened here is that the drip tape was brought down, then it was a little bit short. So then they cut a small piece here, and then they were able to terminate it. Speaking of terminating, here is one of those end plugs that we were talking about. So this end plug, it does a couple of things. One, it stops the water from coming out, because the drip depends on pressure, enough pressure building up in the actual pipe itself. And then it also has this hook, this string here that we, in our system, we use to tie it onto things like this. We also have other systems that we do in other places where we use a wire that we then tie up. But here at Kimberley, I think they've chosen to go this way. And it's important that this is tight, because when it doesn't have water, the drip tape is actually flat, and it can fly around and flop around, and it can be quite a nightmare. So we do tend to tie them up and make them tight. One other thing about our end cap is that we can come and open it here. Sometimes I won't do it because, one, I've got these, and two, I don't want to mess up things, is that we can then open it and then be able to flush out water. Sometimes, for whatever reason, we do get dirt and impurities in here. So we're then able to open up and then flush those dirt and impurities up here. The whole element, as we said, of drip tapeism is that we are literally dripping a little bit of water. So the holes that you have in the emitters, they're very tiny, which does make things a little bit sensitive. So just to show you that a manager's work is never done, what do we have here? Two beautiful couplings, yes, nicely done. Coupling, joiner, coupling. Another one here. Then as we come along here, tapeza chigamba. And this is what the problem is. The guys took a little bit of a shortcut for whatever reason, and they used, I think they were mending a tear, and they used a piece of plastic. Everybody thinks this works. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, because as you can see here, it's dripping a lot more water here than it is on the other ones, where the real emitters. Here's even something even worse. I think a piece of masaka. So the burning question on everybody's lips is, why do we have the bypass? After all, it is a whole other bunch of plumbing that we need to do. Like, each bypass ends with an end cap like this one. So why do we go through all that time and expense? On each bypass, like on this block C here, we've got 6 beds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because our land is sloping, all our land is sloping down to the Kanakantapa River down there. If we were to open all these 20 beds at one time, we'd have a problem. We'd have a problem because gravity would take the water down, and the beds at the bottom, they would get a lot more water than the ones here at the top. We learned this from experience, and that's how we came up with this design, because most of our land here in Chongwe is actually sloping. We're in the river valley after all. So here we have these 1, 2, 3 bypasses on this block, 2 7s, 7, 7, 14, and a 6 here, and we're able to control the water as we actually bring it down and make sure that each block gets an equal amount of water, and then each bed or group of beds also gets a good amount of water. We also use our beloved control valves here to actually close off some of them. So if we find that there's a problem on there and we've got a leakage, we could still close this guy and then be able to fix the leakage or whatever it is as we're going along. So that is a very simple explanation of why we use the bypass system. So the whole of Kondwani 1, all the various blocks that we have here, A down there, B, C, and D, we've got it all laid out with the different drip arrangements that we have, which are all based along a similar theme. You can see down here, we've got these beautiful eggplants that were transplanted mid of July, and back there, the slightly older ones, which are looking a little bit older, a week earlier than that. One of the main advantages of drip irrigation is that it can be used on so many different types of crops. Last year, and I can tell you a secret, why do we have so much drip tape? Mondo Farms owns kilometers and kilometers of drip tape. And one of the reasons is when we do a major crop project, sometimes we have some left over that we can use again, but we also buy in a couple of things where we need some, and we did get quite a large quantity last year, because what did we grow last year? Onion. Controversial. In farming, you're always getting people arguing. And when they find us growing onion on 1 meter beds with 3 drip tapes spaced pakati, someone will come and say, no, you cannot, you must never, you must only use Reynolds, you must only use the sprinkler for onion. If we managed to successfully grow hectares and hectares of onion with drip tape last year, and when we do our next crop of onion as we get into next year's onion season, because we're taking an onion break, as you may have noticed by the lack of onion on the Mondo Farms channel. Yes, next season's onion crop will also be grown with drip tape. So there you have it. We've had a very quick look at drip irrigation. Started with the basics, what is drip irrigation? Then we got into the advantages and the benefits of drip irrigation, 2 different words. And then, of course, we brought you down here to Kondwani 1 from our reservoir down through the whole system and shown you how we actually lay it out as we are growing crops like these beautiful eggplants out here. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that will give you the very finer details about planning and executing your drip irrigation system layout. And as we always say, if you're a beginner, then it's better you go to one of the experts. For example, if you go to a lot of the retailers, the agro dealers that sell drip irrigation, they won't just sell you a piece of drip, a few rows, and say, kabi. They will literally guide you, and some of the more reputable ones will actually come out to your farm and help you set it up. So drip irrigation is something that is crucial to modern farming, can be used on so many different types of crops. Here on the Mondo Farms channel, we don't get too deep into too much detail. So please, I would ask you not to ask for that too much in the comments, but we're just here to share our journey about how we are farming vegetables, food crops, and other crops here on our farms on the outskirts of Chongwe. If you want to keep watching what we are producing, then the best way to do that is to press the subscribe button. And if you press the bell icon, ding, then YouTube will let you know when another video comes along. If there's other people, your workers at the farm, your partners in your farming venture, your spouse, or maybe just a random guy that you met at the club on Saturday and that you want to impress with your knowledge of drip irrigation, then hey, share this video with them by using one of the social media methods like Facebook or WhatsApp or even Telegram. If you think this video was worthy of your stamp of approval, as we say on the Mondo Farms channel, then please give it a thumbs up, which really helps us with the good old YouTube algorithm. He that watches all. And if you've got some experiences with drip irrigation that you'd like to share with us, then please put that in the comments below. My name is Chisha Volatia. It's always my pleasure having you with us on the Mondo Farms channel. We're here to share as we grow and feed Africa one farm at a time. I'll see you soon on the Mondo Farms channel. Shale nipo. Bye-bye.